teaching the black perspective, because I don't think my skin colour gives me a different perspective to British history, because British history is something that unites us all. I think where you're on the money is when you say that black history is British history, because, of course, we just have history. We don't have history based on colour. But I do want to bring you back into this, Giles. We talk about a black presence. Now, no one's disputing that there's always been a black presence. There's always been ethnic minorities within the country. But does that necessarily mean there are significant figures to put on the curriculum, or are we cherry-picking in order to tick boxes here of ethnic diversity?
Well, you can find black figures right throughout British history. You can also find Dutch figures throughout British history. You can find Scottish, Irish figures throughout British history. Their existence doesn't necessarily mean that when you are teaching British history in schools, they have a key role to play. And, we don't do university-level history at secondary school. You have to be able to prioritise on what the key issues are. Now, I'm absolutely fine about talking about slavery and even teaching about slavery, but a module on slavery wouldn't just be the transatlantic slave trade. Model on slavery would be 5 to 10 million slaves propping up the Roman Empire. It would be a quarter of the population of Athens in ancient Greece. It would run through to the Ottoman Empire. It would continue, and it would also include the fact that actually cultural evil has existed in every national group. The Zulu warriors were kept celibate until they had either killed someone or severely wounded them. They weren't a man until that had happened. Well, that's part of their culture, and I think every culture has some things to be ashamed of and disgraced about. But I'll give you a different take on slavery, if you like, Calvin, and that different take is quite simply, we were the first nation in thousands of years. Slavery, remember, was really the occupation of our elite. We were the first nation in thousands of years to rise up with a moral reappraisal where ordinary British people refused to buy sugar. 300,000 of them boycotted it. The Brooks picture came out and people were horrified. It was the first advertising poster of its day. And the whole nation rose up, was the first nation in history to say slavery must end, not just among us because we have been responsible, but it must end throughout the world. And then spent the next 40, 50, 60 years with gunboat diplomacy. There's a paradox for you if you're going to be an anti-imperialist. Gunboat diplomacy, going round the world, eradicating slavery. We sent gunboats against the Sultan of Zanzibar because he refused to stop slavery. We sent gunboats infringing the national territorial waters of Brazil in the 1860s because 30 years after they'd signed a treaty with us to abolish slavery, they hadn't done so. Gunboats came in, blockaded the ports, and within just a few months, they turned around completely and they abandoned slavery as an institution in the country. So actually, I think people have much to be proud of. Every nation has its evil, but we did something remarkable in the 19th century. 85 pieces of legislation in our parliament to stop slavery.